Hello and welcome to the fourth episode in our GLP-1 series, where I discuss a range of topics and issues around GLP-1s with personal trainer Becky Lever. In this session, we're going to carry on the conversation around body reactions, which we also touched upon in our conversation a couple of episodes ago with Sally, who kindly shared her own journey on GLP-1 previously. So welcome back again, Becky. Hello.
Hi, Katrina. Thank you for that. Good to be back again. Yes, so body reactions.
Yeah.
Obviously,
What
having spoken to,
happens?
well, yes, exactly. Having spoken to Sally, she mentioned a few while we were talking to her. So things like hair loss is quite a considerable one, and nausea. Lots of people experience nausea when they start their GLP-1 journeys. As with a number of things, when you start taking something, there are some side effects that you feel first off, and then there are some that develop maybe later on through the journey. If we go through where we are sort of at the outset of a GLP-1 journey for people, just so they understand what is potentially likely, and bearing in mind that everybody is different, so not everyone experiences the same symptoms or the same level of symptoms, but certainly early off, nausea is absolutely one of the core ones that people do identify. They also may have food aversions. There's the food noise that we've been talking about that we had a session on previously. That's obviously a big thing that starts fairly early on in the journey, and so that's where people may not feel hungry, may not recognize that food is as important as it was to them previously, and they just have this space in their minds where they previously were unconsciously or consciously thinking about food more regularly. The other things that people can experience is things like brain fog. So obviously, different times, certainly for perimenopausal women, we do suffer, and I put myself in that category, so I can talk about that one. And brain fog, can be quite difficult to manage sometimes if you just can't seek clarity or can't concentrate on things that you're trying to undertake at the time. Energy dips, we all, as certainly as women, we go through cycles through our menstrual cycle anyway, and we can, have dips in energy at different points in those cycles, and then abundance of energy at other points in the cycle. So it's just worth noting, if you are starting on a GLP-1, if any of these things become apparent, it may be that, or it may just be general, and it's worth just checking things out. As we've talked about before, it's really important to make sure that you're guided by a practitioner when under the GLP-1 medicines, etc., just to make sure that you've got somebody that you can talk to if you don't have family, friends that you're, speaking to about this journey, just to ensure that anything that you experience is normal, or that you're just being monitored along your journey. The other thing is the digestive system. So you may experience constipation because the body system slows down, and you can feel fuller for longer because the gut doesn't empty as quickly as it previously would have done. You may get acid reflux. There's also dehydration risk, so we need to make sure that we're hydrating properly while we're on a GLP-1 journey. So there's sort of things to think about, or that may appear early on. And then, as we've talked about with food noise, if we're forgetting to eat, it might be that we need to structure our eating more rather than just relying on, I feel hungry, I want to eat. You may not feel hungry at times of the day, and making sure that we try and get some nutritious food in, to keep the nutrient levels up, minerals, vitamins, etc. Making sure that we get lots of proteins, the good fats, carbohydrates, because they're important for our energy levels, which again can play into the reason that some people experience other symptoms as we go through these. I don't know if you've got any questions that you wanted to pick up on, Katrina, as part of this session.
No, I was just sort of thinking that it is so important about this, having spoken to a number of people on GLP-1s and this business. Well, it's great. I don't feel like I need to eat. And it's,
Mm.
well, yes, you do need to eat for your body, as you've just said, but also in preparation, if you are thinking at some point that you do want to come off GLPs, is that you are setting sort of a good routine.
Yes. Yeah. And I think what I've noticed, certainly with clients that I've worked with, is while they're on the journey, they are they are intrinsically aware of the things that can happen, and the side effects, and the food noise, and the not wanting to eat or not feeling like they need to eat because they feel fuller more of the time, and putting in good behaviors so that when they do get to a point that they either start microdosing, lower doses than the original amounts that they were on, or coming off of GLP-1s if that's the prescribed route that's been advised for them, that those structures, like you say, are in place before they finish. So the behaviours psychologically are all embedded, and that therefore they don't go to a state that they maybe overeat because they've now got the food noise back again, or that they haven't changed their the routine, if you like, to do, to get the right food quality in. The other thing is obviously making sure that they incorporate the movement and exercise. So we've talked a bit about this, this need for strength because we lose muscle mass as we're losing weight. It's a natural part of weight loss, but with GLP-1s, the muscle mass is considerably higher in terms of its loss, not just the fat. So making sure that we obviously put that routine in that we've and then continue that afterwards, which is all good and positive for longevity as well.
So the main areas, or the ones that we've really focused on, is the food noise, which we spoke about earlier, and also how it affects gut health as well. And
yes.
Are there any other ones that we should be really considering?
Yeah, so for women, there may be changes in their menstrual cycle, so it's worth identifying whether there is, irregularity when they start taking GLP-1s. Flow might change, etc. As we've talked about, moods and general energy levels can change, and that's quite important depending on what people are doing. So, from job perspective, running around after children, part of the family, having to look after elderly parents, or depending what the demands are on the individual, depends on the energy capacity they need, and therefore food is a really important source of energy. But if we don't feel like eating, we need to make sure that we substitute that somewhere else. But we also need to be mindful that if we are suffering more fatigue because we've started this, that we are a bit kinder to ourselves and give ourselves a bit more time to rest. So it may be things like taking an earlier nap time in the evening, starting to just think a bit more about putting rest and mindfulness into our daily routine rather than, racing as we all do from pillar to post.
I think also it is also thank you for pointing out, and it is really important. We're not health professionals medically ourselves. Is understanding, people that are taking GLP-1s, whether they're going through the menopause. So, these may be basic, the symptom you may be experienced may not be a GLP-1, it may be the menopause. Or if you have, and obviously particularly for our audience, whether it be a rare or chronic health condition, how that maybe affect what it is. So that would be interesting, definitely something I think that you should need to cover that with your doctor.
Yes, definitely. It's and when starting on a GLP-1 journey, typically there are protocols and there are guidelines as to who should and shouldn't be prescribed GLP-1s. The GP will work with individuals that are coming to them for, support and health around weight management, etc. And if you meet the criteria, then obviously that's an opportunity to be supported in that way. As I've experienced with clients, if some are diabetic, they also potentially prescribe to GLP-1s because it helps with the insulin management, and obviously around weight management as well. There's different reasons that people are prescribed GLP-1s and for which purposes and benefits. And then also the journey just needs to be monitored, as we've talked about already. I think it's interesting also mentioning that the weight loss patterns around GLP-1s can shift. So initially it might be quite quick weight loss and quite substantial weight loss, which can create, it can create appearance changes as well in terms of people looking more facially gaunt or facial, volume loss, losing the volume in the faces, which comes from, fast, rapid weight loss. Skin might change, so it's worthwhile making sure that we just track. And I think awareness is core for anybody that's on a GLP-1 journey or supporting anyone on a GLP-1 journey, to make sure if there's anything that feels abnormal, to the point that can't be managed, or something that just feels just unsure about, to get some advice and get some help and ask the questions.
Absolutely. So I was just then trying to be very careful to bring across my papers to talk about what we're going to talk about in the next episode. To make sure that we know what we're going to do. And this one, which I think will be really interesting, is the sort of the loneliness, the emotional and social impact. And I know we've spoken about some of these things before, but it's definitely very much, I think it's important to be aware of it, because lots of people don't talk about the impact that GLP-1 has on this. So I'm certainly going to be looking forward to chatting to you later about that.
Good stuff. Thank you, Catriona.
Thank you. Bye.